guys, welcome back to Midwest Whitetail. As you can see, last night we finally closed the chapter on Vendetta. It was about a 6-yard encounter, a spot and stock, and boy, it's gonna have you on the edge of your seat. So look forward to this coming on the channel in the next few weeks. In addition to this hunt, we've got a lot of action for you guys. We've got 3 good hunts from Andy, David, and Chad over in Illinois. They had some great mid-November action. But on this week's show, it's all about Mike Reed. He finally caught up to a deer that he calls Fitzmagic. 5 years of history, a lot of awesome lessons learned, and I can't wait to watch it myself. So I hope you guys really enjoy, and as always, thank you guys for watching.
Welcome back to another week of Midwest Whitetail. It's Thanksgiving weekend here, and we certainly have a lot to be thankful for. Thank you to all of you guys out there, the viewers. None of this would be possible without you. And I just want to say thank you to our team here at Midwest Whitetail. You know, we have a great team. I've been a part of this for a decade now, and every year it just gets better and better, and it's really a privilege to work with such a great group of guys, and it's really been a year to remember, 2023. We've had great success from the very beginning, and for those of you that follow along, it's our 15-year anniversary of Midwest Whitetail, and feel really blessed to have such a great group and have so much fun being able to do what we do here at Midwest Whitetail. Before I get started with the story of this buck we call Fitzmagic, we've just been reflecting on the season in general, and it's been a heck of a season. You know, starting out with Bella taking down Big Mac, 3-year quest, 5 years of history with a deer, something that's so rare, and the season could have ended there, and it would have been a successful season to remember. And you know, carrying on with Bryn getting her first buck down and then having success on the River Bottom farm. And it's just certainly feel really blessed and thankful for how the season's gone so far. Outside of the previous few years of hunting for me, I've never had deer that I've been able to follow for so long. You know, we look back at some of these bucks like last year with Kelsey, Merino, Fitzmagic, 4 and 5 years of history with a particular deer in the wild. It seems unfathomable, or at least it used to. And it's really a blessing to have a piece of property that we've been able to cultivate and manage and have good neighbors and be able to follow these deer year to year. I mean, it's certainly part of the obsession, and it's fun to see what they can become. The story of this buck really begins back in 2019. And if you guys remember, 2018 was a really bad flood year for us. I mean, the whole farm went underwater. I was wrapping up my last year on the first farm I'd ever bought. I had made plans to sell it just because it was a little too far away from the house, and kids were getting older. It was getting harder to get down there. And so we were spending a lot of family time down at our cabin in southern Iowa and hunting that farm, being that I was such a sort of a sentimental piece, and then the river farm was underwater. And so really just didn't spend a lot of time on the farm and didn't run cameras that much because we lost a bunch of cameras when the river went out of the banks and the whole farm flooded. And so fast forwarding to 2019, really looking forward to getting in there and spending a lot of time. I had sold my main property down in southern Iowa, and the river farm was a place I'd be focusing some time and energy. And we had this handful of deer that we were building history with, and Merino was certainly the main one that went from year to year, and he was a really tough deer to hunt just because he didn't spend a ton of time on the farm. And you guys that follow along know that story. It was a fun multi-year quest. Fitzmagic, which in the past we kind of referred to him as a turn-in 10 because his tines always turned in, but he was a 3-year-old back in 2019 as far as I could tell. Every year we like to take note of our good 3-year-olds, but there's so much turnover in that age group. I mean, they disperse, they leave, they die of natural causes. It's hard to sort of bank on them being present in future years. So it's just sort of like, man, that's a good 3-year-old, he has potential, and then you're still focusing on your other targets. And that year we had Todd Gurley and we had Merino as the 2 main targets. And I was fortunate enough to catch up with Todd Gurley at the end of October there. It's funny thinking back, and we're digging through footage. Actually had an encounter with Fitzmagic that night. Man, that is an interesting spot for that deer to be cruising up. Right. Dude, that's God, right? I think he just went down. None of these deer are coming in the food plot. They're all walking in the timber. I was able to stop him at 27 yards. Looked like I pummeled him. It looked like I made a great shot. It sounded like he went down over here, so pretty exciting. And we had some other encounters with him that year, and really was just appreciating the potential he had as a 3-year-old. Looking forward to 2020, my main focus was on the home farm. I had a buck we called Turkey Foot over there, just a beautiful deer. We had the drop tine deer, Ali. I just had a nice group of bucks that it was my 3rd year on the property. I had 3 years of history with a lot of these deer. I hadn't harvested many animals, and 2020 was a year that I was like focusing a lot on the home farm. Turkey Foot was really daylight active and seemed killable, and that's where I focused a lot of my attention. Ended up catching up with him in mid-October. And after that happened, then I said, all right, I'm gonna refocus my efforts on Dak. Dak was a great looking 4-year-old back in 2019, lots of encounters with him, and then he blew up into just a beautiful, beautiful buck in 2020. And I spent the entire rest of the season down on the River Bottom farm chasing after Dak. Had one memorable encounter with Fitzmagic in 2020, and that was out of the same stand I'd seen the year before, the South Plot. 2020 was an interesting year because that was the most time I'd ever spent down on the River Bottom farm. And that was the year, my first full year on the property I had bought south of our first piece that we had. And while I didn't spend a ton of time there because Dak wasn't there a lot, I did start hunting there and start learning that property and this area I referred to as the Central Timber, and started trying to figure out how deer use the property. I mean, looking at it on an aerial or even being on the ground, it's all flat river bottom, not quite as thick as the north part of the farm, and it wasn't quite as obvious to me how deer would use the property. And so just tree time and observation, started appreciating different patterns and trying to learn how to hunt that farm. Moving on to 2021, this is when Ryan and I's relationship started. Ryan was an intern that year, and all summer I was following this buck I called Chubbs. I mean, Chubbs had just blown up into just a monster of an Iowa whitetail, and he was out at the home farm, and I put all my eggs in that basket and all my effort, and 30 sets later ended up catching up with Chubbs on November 10th. Super awesome memory. And then we moved over to the River Bottom farm to try to pick up back where I'd left off the year before. You know, I had 3 encounters with Dak in 2020, no success. Now he's 6.5 years old, and so I said, you know, that's the guy I'm going to focus on now. And then first sit really after shooting Chubbs, November 17th, we have Dak stroll under us in the pinch, and as much as we struggled to get him in bow range in 2020, he certainly made it easy on us in 2021. Being that I didn't hunt the River Bottom farm very much that year until late season, I didn't have any encounters with Fitzmagic. And he was a deer that he sort of slipped under the radar, and I'll go into that a little bit more later, but I was focused down there late season. That's when we had actually bought our cabin that year, so we were able to spend time down here for the holidays and be with family and hunt late season, whereas previous years like 2020, we were focusing all of our late season efforts at the home farm. And I had my main goal of shooting that big 8, and had the good fortune of having Merino pop out. And 2021 was my first year I had good food plots on the River Bottom farm on my south piece. You know, we got beans to grow, we had excellent food sources, and spent a lot of time there late season, and encountered Fitzmagic a few times on the beans late season, and every time he would pop out, I'd be like, man, what deer's that? Binos would go up, I'd get excited because he just looked so good, even at 200 yards away. And like, oh, that's that deer, that's that big 4-year-old. I mentioned how he kind of slipped under the radar, and it's weird to even think about, honestly. I've been a deer nut since I was 5 years old is when it started, and it's never stopped. And such a beautiful deer that year, and it's the first time a buck has really ever slipped under the radar on me. And I've reflected back on how that might have happened. And just, my life is pure chaos, like a lot of our lives. And I've got 5 kids. The kids are getting older. My work schedule is just crazy every year. I'm trying to figure out how to manipulate my work schedule and spend more time in a tree. And you know, I get really focused. Probably the last 5-6 years, I've just tried to pick a buck, and then I just really focused on that buck. And I don't nearly spend the time I used to spend. I mean, I look back 15, 20 years ago, no wife, no kids. I mean, I just was trail camera pictures all the time, just patterning deer, looking back at previous years. And I just knew everything about every buck, where they were, which cameras, I could recite it to you. And in the last few years, just being pulled in so many different directions, which I think a lot of people can relate to, there's no way to do that anymore. And so I pick my buck I want to hunt. I try to really focus on that deer, use the information, the previous history, knowledge I have of them to hunt them. And I think that's the best explanation I have into how such a great buck, you know, does slip under the radar. It's just a lack of time, really, because I know in the past it never would have happened. And the running joke this year has been that he was 4.5 years old for 3 years. And it's interesting that he's always been a little bit of a smaller bodied deer. It wasn't like DK or Kelsey, where you get a picture of him, or Todd Gurley for that matter, at any point in the season, you're like, look at the body on that deer. He's never had that. He's always been a slender frame deer. He's always had this long, skinny face. You know, and so year to year, I never took time to go back and dig through old photos and try to figure him out until last year, where we were having so many encounters with him, and I'll get into this, but I dug back last year and actually found photos all the way back to 2019. So coming into this year, I really knew, I had a better idea of actually how old he was. Looking forward to 2022, you know, I was really focusing on the River Bottom farm. I had beans there, and that's where I was focusing a lot of my velvet scouting. And we had lots of bucks that we were looking for. JT, we had DK we were looking for, Kelsey, all these different bucks, and we were getting pictures of them. And so I spent some time velvet scouting down there and actually got to film him out in the beans one night. Throughout the summer, the main deer I was going to focus on was going to be Kelsey. You know, we had lots of encounters with him the year before, and you never know who's going to pop up or who's going to blow up. But Kelsey was definitely the focus. He was 6.5 years old. I knew he was in there. We had 4 years of history with him. And so that was the deer I was focusing on. And then we had deer like Poseidon, and we had deer like DK that were 5.5 years old, and spending a lot of time down on the River Bottom farm. We started out the year hunting on my south piece and shooting Poseidon first sit of the year, October 6th. Just crazy how it unfolded. I mean, not expecting it at all, but nice little early October weather front, and here walks in this giant buck. And you know, before I killed Poseidon out of that set, I mean, we did a big segment on it in the summer about why I thought it was so good. And it was from the previous year's encounters and observations. There's that old farm lane that rolls through there. You've got the access through the slough. You've got acorns there, and just a unique setup that worked beautifully in the early season. It was fun to spend time there, but I also realized a lot of challenges of this part of the property, and I still don't feel like I know it. In fact, while we were hunting Kelsey, I made lots of observations and picked out trees to modify the plan on how deer utilize it. It is interesting that it changed dramatically too from year to year because of the drought conditions. And so when there was water in all these sloughs, it guided the deer movement slightly differently compared to when everything was dry. Getting that buck down early, then I was just all my eggs in the Kelsey basket. Kelsey had really moved to the south the most that year, more than I'd seen in any previous years, and I really got to spend a lot of time on that part of the property just learning it, like more so than the previous years, just trying to hone in on how deer use the property in this area we call the Central Timber. So spending all this time on the River Bottom farm hunting Kelsey, one of my observations was just how active Fitz was. And as I mentioned last year, I mean, I was still calling him a 4.5-year-old just because I was questioning myself when we got pictures of him. He was so small bodied, like, was he 3 the year before? And that's when I actually had gone back and looked at photos and said, man, he's 6.5 this year. As we got farther into our hunt for Kelsey and I was struggling to get him in bow range on the south part of the farm, I decided to try some of the other areas on the property that historically were so productive during the rut, just kind of your best pinches and funnels. And so I was moving around the farm a little bit more and found myself in the pinch on November 6th and really just had two unbelievable sits back-to-back days right there in November. Good morning. It's the morning of November 6th. Sunday, we got a beautiful sunrise. And Ryan are in the pinch down at the River Bottom Farm. I didn't have a good spot to go and hunt Kelsey where he's been hanging out the last week or so. We've really been waiting for the right wind to come hunt the pinch anyway, so it's fun to be back in this set. It's one of my most favorite sets on the whole property. I'm gonna sit back and enjoy the morning. Well, that's always awesome to see. They all kind of were posturing and two broke out in a fight, pushing and shoving for a bit. They got into the natives. All we could see is the grass moving. Hopefully the action continues. He's breeding her right now. He's breeding her right now. Well, it's about noon. I've decided we're gonna pack up and make the switch back to where we were last night. As much fun as we're having right here. I mean, 15 plus bucks, breeding, fighting. I mean, if we didn't see another deer throughout the rest of the day, it'd be one of the best hunts I've ever had. So, real happy with the day so far, but we're gonna get down and make the switch. So we'll see you guys the other set. It's November 7th. We're in the same tree that I shot my buck out of on October 6th, on the south side of this central timber. It's an awesome day to be in the woods, so we're gonna put our time in. Aren't those daggers? Look like a big body. It's daggers. That's an all-out brawl right there. That is an all-out brawl right there. There he's walking to the right. Well, it's about 3:15. It's hard to beat this spot. I mean, being right on the edge of this big bedding. Just had the turn in 10. You know, he got in that fight with daggers about 11:30, and about 2:30, a couple young bucks chased a doe by, and he stood up and ended up coming right in to 30 yards. So cool to see him again, up close and personal. such an unbelievable experience to those 2 days in the woods. I mean, 2 of the best days of hunting I've ever experienced to this day. November 6th, seeing the breeding, bucks running around, it was a really cool encounter. And then the big fight with daggers the next day in the central timber, and daggers actually won. I mean, Fitz ran off with his tail tucked. And we were in the Poseidon set that day. And you know, just cumulatively learning about the central timber, because honestly, it's an area that I sort of overlooked when I first started hunting the property. I mean, you can see through it. It's not that big, and it just didn't seem like an area like a lot of deer would bed and hang out in, but it goes little ridge, little slough, little ridge, little slough. It's old oxbows, so to speak. It's carved up from the river over the last however many hundreds of years, and it's really thick on the ground level. When you're taking the bird's eye view as far as the river's edge, you know, we've got our 2 peninsulas, but it is the spot where if the deer are running up and down the river, coming out of either peninsula, they're gonna pass through there. And what's unique about it is you can see up in a tree stand from the river basically all the way out to the ag fields. And so it works out great in the rut, where you can see a large area, and it's just a really wide sort of funnel that at that time of year with calling, et cetera, you can, it's favorable for calling because of the ground level cover. You can hunt it and have great hunts. And so I'm just kind of storing all this information away as we're sitting there. And over time, I set it up where I've got a spot on the north end of it where I can hunt it on the south wind, and I've got a spot, the Poseidon set, on the south end of the central timber where I can hunt it on north wind. That tree is certainly better than the other one, but it's 2 nice setups that are right in the middle. There's a little ditch that runs parallel to the river there that I've noticed over time that deer tend to walk up and down. I filmed the black-eyed 10, if you guys remember, doing that exact pattern some years before, breaking off the branch and his antlers, walking right under the tree. And you know, it's those kinds of sits where I'm like, all right, this is a movement pattern that is consistent. How they come back in the morning is interesting. They come out from the ag, they come out from across the road, and there's all these little ridges that just all curve back in there, and you just watch all the deer filter back in. And then you also have, like I said, that river movement up and down. So you have 2 different movement patterns colliding there, and it's proven to be a pretty fantastic spot. And then another little data point was Ryan and I sneaking in to hunt a different stand the next day, and we bump into Fitzmagic bedded with a doe on the outskirts of the property in a little willow thicket, actually right near where I killed him this year. And it was something like interesting. He's you know, you'll see these mature bucks do that. He had just lost a daggers the day before, but this property is overloaded with does. I've talked about that a lot. And so the number of bucks, you know, they can fight and push each other around. There's plenty of does to go around, but it was interesting to see him get a doe, take her out away from the central timber a little bit where he could hide. And it was right along our access path on the outskirts of the property. We jumped him up and he ran into the central timber with her. November 8th was the last time I laid eyes on Fitzmagic in 2022. We ended up wrapping up the season, shot Kelsey late season with the muzzleloader on the north side of the farm and never had any encounters with him. And then we did find Fitz's shed in shed season right there in that plot to the south where I think he ended up hanging out most of the winter. It's actually where I found his 5-year-old sheds and his 6-year-old shed. So it was interesting information again to see how he's honing up his range farther to the south. So fast forward to 2023, my primary focus again after encountering DK late season, picking up his shed, was gonna be DK for the 2023 season. So we're spending a lot of time on the north end of the property, but we did actually get footage of Fitzmagic in velvet, and it was a low light, kind of distant encounter, but could tell that he was growing a really great rack this year. He threw all of his base kickers off and he was sprouting his G5s, and he showed up a little bit later than usual, but once we started getting trail camera pictures of him, I was really appreciating how awesome of a buck he was this year. But again, I was just primarily focused on DK, and I just really enjoy that aspect of hunting now. That's just where I'm at with my hunting. I really enjoy just trying to figure out one buck and hunt him. And even though I was getting pictures of Fitz, he had moved south, he was well into the property, I was staying focused on DK until I could catch up with him, and was fortunate enough to on October 30th. And then I turned my attention fully to Fitzmagic. So when I'm strategizing to hunt a buck, I use all the historical data, historical encounters, historical trail camera photos, and then obviously the current stuff from this year. Every year it changes slightly, and this year one of the unique things was the acorn crop. It was just an unbelievable mass crop this year. And we noticed that in the pinch where I have a cluster of oak trees, and then we noticed that down on the south part of the farm. This is right near where I had seen him locked down with the doe the year before, and it's an interesting area. It's on the edge of the central timber. It just sets up beautifully well. There's this farm road that comes out of the central timber that a lot of deer like to walk down. I keep it cleared and mowed. We use it for access, and it's lined with oaks. It's a natural pathway out to the ag fields. And then historically I put a little upland bird plot there. I like to pheasant hunt sort of out on the edge of the farm when I get a chance. And so I normally put sorghum and sunflower out in this little upland bird plot. And this year I decided to make it a little green plot. With the drought, we planted our brassicas a little late there, and it's a little bit higher than everything else, so it dried out. And we came back and rescued it with some wheat and rye. And so we had a little green food source there, plus all the acorns right next to the bedding. And hindsight's 2020, but it worked out really, really well. Give us an opportunity. Looking at trail cameras, the Little Peninsula was where I thought he was bedding the most at the end of October and early November. And we were getting pictures of him going into the Little Peninsula in the morning, mid-morning, and coming out of the Little Peninsula an hour before dark. And so I killed DK my last day of my rutcation, had to go to work for a few days, and my first day back in the woods, I said, let's go set the Little Peninsula. And that was the day we actually had 3 encounters with him. And Ryan and I were certainly riding high after being successful on DK, and we were probably a little bit lackadaisical on our approach in the tree. And we had Fitz, unfortunately, doing just what he had done previous days, coming in mid-morning, but he was slipping in behind us, and he caught us and got out of there. The 2 afternoon spots that I thought I might be able to catch up with him were going to be the south plot and this little oak tree that I ended up killing him out of. That afternoon, we had the wind to go to the south plot, and no sooner than we got in the tree, here he comes. All right, that doe just came out. He's gonna come. There he is. Let's come back out in the lane. Hopefully those does come out here. We've had an exciting start to the afternoon hunt. Ryan and I are on the same end of the farm that we were this morning, but we've moved. This spot is the spot we call the south plot. It's a nice turnip plot. We got a little clover mixed in. And the deer naturally work their way out of the bedding through this plot off to the cut ag field. And we no sooner got in the stand than laid eyes on our target buck, Fitzmagic. He kind of pushed those does around. One of those does must be pretty close because he stayed on the herd trail. I threw a few calls his way, grunt, snort, wheeze. He stopped. He looked very intently in this direction, but it's a tough situation to try to call him away from her. But his body language was such that he wasn't very interested, and we had a spike under us and other deer, so I didn't want to start banging the antlers together and scare everything. It's nice to see him this twice today, so hopefully we get another chance and get him in bow range. That was a fun afternoon. Non-stop action the whole time we were here. It's really cool to lay eyes on Fitzmagic again. Hopefully we can get him in bow range tomorrow. It's him. It's him, dude. We're still good. Well, as you guys can see, you got a little close there right at the end. We were just talking, how many minutes do we have left till legal shooting? And I said 5, and I heard a deer coming out of the timber, and I couldn't quite tell what it was, but then he got in the food plot, and I was like, it's a pretty good buck. And binos on him, it was him. And then we heard another one coming out of that thicket in front of us. So it was a little buck, and I thought, man, this is going to happen. He's going to follow this little buck right to the base of the tree, but he just stared at that buck and then walked down the path. Now we're gonna stay after him, and I think we have a pretty good chance of catching up with him here pretty soon if it stays like this. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Well, we're down at the River Bottom Farm, about to head out to the set. We are going to head to the Poseidon set, which is the south side of the Central Timber. It's just a great spot. We've had lots of encounters with Fitzmagic there last year. It's the edge of a big bedding area, and the deer all just filter back in there, and there's lots of chasing. And after our 3 encounters with him yesterday, he's very active on the farm, and fingers crossed he'll come in bow range this morning.
Yeah, that's him. It's about 12:15.
I said big doe on the lane, and I got her in the glass, and she looked back behind her, and right away we see this buck we call Tony, and it's a buck that Rye has been contemplating whether or not he wants to shoot it.
It was a tough decision. It would have been a challenge to get the camera arm out of the way and get Mike's bow, and I didn't make the decision fast enough, so.
This is a tough stand to do the switcheroo in. Cool encounter for the middle of the day. It's always fun to see. Well, it's Sunday, November 5th. We are back in the pond set on the Little Peninsula. It's that time of year where you don't know if he's got to get locked down with one of the first does or if he's still out running around. But we're going to put a few hours in this morning and see if he shows up.
That's pretty darn cool, man.
Dude, that's unbelievable. It's so neat to be able to see that. We are all set up for the afternoon. We're back in this little pin oak on this farm lane that comes out of the central timber. Got the green plot, got all the acorns, just, again, tons of deer right here. I think a lot of the deer that bed back in this section of the farm end up somewhere in the vicinity of this, so I feel like it's one of our better places to catch up with him in the afternoon. Southeast wind, which just blows it right back up the slough here. Hopefully he shows up. That deer won't leave us alone. Now that was a fun sit. I mean, for 62 degrees and 15-mile-an-hour plus winds, I wasn't sure what kind of activity we'd see, and it started not long after we sat down, and it never stopped. Well, it is Friday. We're in a tree that I've never hunted before. It's a big giant red oak, and I actually set it up for velvet filming. There's just been a lot of deer right here. I've got a camera on the crossing, and I've had Fitzmagic on the crossing right at last light a few times. I think there's so many does right here, and there's cut corn that, and he's not really been on many other cameras. He's on that lane that we've hunted quite a bit, those red oaks near that little green plot, and then he's been right here. You know, we're not out of the game, but it also doubles as an observation sit, so we'll see what happens. Good morning. Happy Veterans Day to everyone. Thank you to all of you who have served or are currently serving. We're on the north edge of the central timber in this little white oak. We've hunted it a few times in the past. We've had a few young bucks chasing does around in here as they're slowly making their way back into the bedding. This whole little wetland central timber is a big bedding area. He was daylight 2 days ago. I had to work the last 2 days, and he was kind of all over camera. He was in the morning in daylight and the evening in daylight. I think he was probably between does. But this is the sort of the area of the farm that he's been most active in. Hopefully Fitzmagic shows up. It's about 10:30, and we are going to wrap up this morning's hunt. It's the time of year, you know, it's feast or famine. I mean, especially if you're hunting one particular deer, you know, they get locked with a doe, you just won't see them for 3 days. And so we just got to stay patient and put our time in. We're going to get packed up, and we'll see you guys this afternoon. Well, we just got set up here for the afternoon. We're back in this little red oak, sitting on the green plot and where this lane comes out of the central timber. Wind is closer to predicted. It's a little more east than what they have forecasted, but at least has a decent amount of south in it. We've got 3 little fawns. 2 are bedded at like 20 yards, one's on his feet at 60, 70. It still feels nice and cool. It's upper 40s, overcast. The pressure's still over 30.3, but it's gonna be dropping over the next 24 hours. I keep coming back here because so many does come out right here in the evening. We've had a lot of great hunts, and this has been the most active area for Fitzmagic, so hopefully he shows up tonight. What? What? Oh no. That was not good. Might have gotten the femoral.
I think he's gonna go down.
I know. I see that. Oh, I got so lucky right there. He's definitely down. They haven't even moved. What is going on? I knew it was going to be him too. It's 3:30. 2 hours before dark. On Veterans Day, we haven't had a picture of this deer in a couple days. And the pictures we do get have been sporadic, but they've all been over here. And I was like, he must be just out on this edge. Got him on just some of the weirdest camera locations that I really have up for like trespassing, entry and exit routes and stuff like that. Well, we've had all these fawns sitting under us, and then we had baby 8, he's got the broken G2 come through. And all of a sudden I can hear a chase coming, but I've got all this cover in this tree so I couldn't see. Well, that doe came through the willow thicket, and I hear a grunt. And in my head, I'm thinking, it's gonna be him. And I stop him. I tried to stop him 3 times. Finally, he stopped. He was quartering away pretty hard. And I don't think my anchor point was very good. He was quartering away, like I said, pretty hard. And I was gonna shoot him to the offside leg, which would have been behind the rib cage. And it went right in front of the hip, which a lot of times if you hit right there, you can luck out. You can cut the femoral artery. I didn't see a ton of blood coming out of him, but he's dead at 75 yards, so I got bailed out right there. I mean, that kind of ruins the moment for excitement when you make a bad shot like that. But a hot doe, November 11th. He was locked on that doe, pushing her around. Well, the funnest thing about this is that my kids are down here at the cabin, so I'm gonna call my wife and have her bring them out. And then we'll all be able to go recover them together. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Whole crew's here?
Whole crew's here. Let's see if we can stink up the woods. Hi, Kate.
It also happened. Wait, did you see him fall over? Where did he fall?
Yeah, we did. He was standing in.
I'm stepping where you're stepping.
This is where he was.
Hey, whoever finds blood first gets a candy bar.
Yeah, he ran somewhere right through here. I found it.
Look at how many birds are here.
So he was quartering away really hard. Now I was aiming about right here because of where he was quartering away, but I hit him a little bit farther back. But the arrow got in there and did the trick. He didn't go very far, did he? What do you think?
Good. Look at his tongue. Can I see?
Well, pretty awesome feeling to close the story on this buck we nicknamed Fitzmagic. First, talk about the shot. You know, my initial reaction was, that I did not make a good shot. Obviously, he ran over and died right there within a minute. And then when we got to walk up to him and look at him and kind of analyze things, it wasn't as bad as I initially thought. He's quartering away pretty hard. Rye is 3 or 4 feet to my right, the way this stand sets up, coming off of the tree this way, and I'm all the way on the end of my platform. And so where the deer's walking to his side of the tree, so my quartering away angle was even a little sharper, 25-yard shot. Felt good about putting it in. I was aiming, probably 4 or 5 inches to the right of where I hit, so I did not hit exactly where I wanted. And there's a number of things that go into that. Obviously, I was ducking a branch and it's super chaotic in the tree. That's one of the things that, we talk about what leads to bad shots sometimes. Talk about low light and then just the chaos. And it all worked out in the end. The arrow did bury to the fletchings and it did hit in the offside leg. It worked out well. He died quickly and we made an easy recovery. Regarding the time of year and the hunting, I talked about a little bit in my opener. November 11th, peak breeding here in the Midwest is November 15th. We're into that sort of lockdown phase. This time of year, you just got to put your time in the stand. You got to be patient. It was 2 or 3 days ago now that I had him in the morning and the evening right here along this dike in daylight. And I was like, oh, he's between does, but I was at work. And this year he's been particularly located right here on this end. And so I just decided we're going to keep putting our time in right here and eventually we should cross paths with him. And that doe drug him right under the tree, as you guys saw. That was extra chaotic. It didn't make for the best video, obviously. We didn't get a lot of pre-roll of him coming in. It just was fast and it's the rut. It's a lot of fun. And he's at the base of the tree before we get the camera rolling. Just a really fun experience and a great way to be tagged out here in Iowa. It was pretty awesome to have success on November 11th and close the story on Fitzmagic. It's my first buck on Veterans Day. For those of you that have been following along for the last few years, you know that my brother's a veteran. And so Veterans Day always hits a little close to home. Just want to really say thank you to all the veterans out there, everyone who's currently serving and who has served in the past. We really appreciate you guys and couldn't do what we do without you, and just want to say thank you.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the story of Fitzmagic. Certainly one I'll remember for a long time. Moving forward, the team's had a lot of success. As you guys saw in the opener, Caleb caught up with that Vendetta buck. We've got a lot of action-packed hunts to bring you guys this way over the coming weeks. And we're excited. We still got some tags in our pockets. Bella's out bow hunting. And we're looking forward to late muzzleloader and late archery season here in Iowa. We're all strategizing at the house and as a team and excited to see how the season will end for us. As always, we really appreciate you guys watching. Good luck if you're still out there hunting. Stay safe, and we'll see you back next time.